to this class. Yeah. So in case another note to take note of is everyone will be muted, so that there will not be any background interference for one another. So in case you do not know me, I'm from Empire Code. I'm Embo. So Empire Code was founded in 2016 as an encoding education center. And as of 2018, we have expanded within the tech industry and now comprises of Empire Code Education, Empire Code Launchpad, and Empire Code Lovebacks. So in Empire Code, we believe that everyone, as long as you have passions, you can code. So regardless of their educational background, we don't necessarily need a bachelor degree in computer science to code. So as long as you have a passion, a heart to learn, you can code. And do follow us on our social media, Empire Code SG, and linking for more updates on coding tips. Yeah. So before we even begin, I do have a pre-training survey, and you have a post-training after that. So pre-training survey to fill out. Could everyone just log into this on your browsers, key into this in the browser? And once we are done, give me a thumbs up in the chat so that we can proceed on. Yeah. Just take about 5 minutes to finish this survey. So give me a thumbs up on the chat once you are ready to proceed. Yeah. All right. Thank you to our first responder. Thank you. Okay, let's wait for another 1 minute or so. Okay, I do see responses. All right, let's move on, yeah? So thank you all for doing this survey. So when we develop web pages, we do have several language that we use. So for today, we will be touching on the front-end languages, which comprises of the HTML and HTML5, which is the latest update of the HTML, as well as CSS. So HTML provides the structures of a house, of a web page, for example, in a house. So when you need to draw, when you need to do some drawings, we usually do the outline first. So in a web development would be the HTML. And when it comes to adding colors and making it nicer, we use a CSS. So we'll be touching on this too later on. Then after the reading the structures and the adding the color, size, and customizing the web page, we do have in JavaScript. JavaScript involve the moving pixels, like the animations, buttons. And for example, a person who tries to log into their social media. So they try to add in they try to put in their details in their usernames and their passwords. And the buttons are representing the JavaScript. And when all the details are keyed in, there's actually another back-end language, for example, Java. In Java, they uses they check with the database that is stored either in the cloud or the locally. So they'll check against whether this username is valid or invalid based on the database, which is on the cloud or the locally. Yeah. And when we develop web pages, we will have to use a code editor to write our codes. There are many code editors out there, and we have actually chosen one that we think that is suitable for this course. I will share with you on later more. So how do we choose our own code editor? Since there are so many code editors in the markets, we have to look at our requirement first. So when we choose a code editor, you need to make sure that it supports multiple languages and not just slowly on HTML and CSS. You have to have multiple languages so that you can code it within the same editor. It should have integrated development environment features, and of course, if there's community support, there are bound to be developers making extensions, so it could help you in your development work. And lastly, ideally, it should be free. And there are many out there in the market. Yeah. So for today's course, we have actually chosen a Visual Studio Code. So why Visual Studio Code? Firstly, it's by Microsoft, and which is free to use. And secondly, it does provide a code completion, code checking for errors that get highlighted immediately should there be any errors, as well as code hints. So it also has extension that could add on and you can make use of it. And it does support Windows and Mac. So let's go about and install this now. So when we do this, write in this in the browser and it will bring you to this web page. So it will bring you to this web page, code.visualstudio.com. I'll write it in the chat as well if it's not written yet. So choose the source that is more suitable for you. Is it Windows or Mac OS? Once we are done with the downloading, give me a thumbs up or just write in the chat. Okay. So in Empire Code, we use Visual Studio Code for all our curriculums. Okay. Okay, let's take another 2 minutes or so and then we can move on. Okay. All right, thank you. So once we have downloaded it, open it up, you should see something like this. Yeah. So for today, we are going to add in an extension called Open in Browser. So on your left-hand side, you was on the fifth button, which is the last button, you can see this extension. Type in Open in Browser. Ensure that is 2.0.0. This will be the extension we need. So click on it and download it. We will only need one extension for today, yeah? Open in browser. So open in browser is what we will be needed for today, the extensions. Ensure it's 2.0.0 because there are several versions in the extensions. All right, do let me know when everything is all right. Yeah. Okay, in your Visual Studio Code, on the left-hand side, fifth button, there's this extension, or you can Control Shift X, and in the search button, search for Open in Browser 2.0, 2.0.0, which is the first. Yeah. Yes, please download Open in Browser so that we could use it for our coding later on. Okay, let's give another minute. Okay, once we are done with downloading the extensions as well as Visual Studio Code, I'm going to introduce you, okay, more of like do some of the housekeeping that whenever we do coding or even whenever we are doing web development, it's important to have a good file management. So why do we need a good file management? Because where we need to retrieve the folder, need to retrieve the images, so that it's important that we know where is it seated in it. So for today on my desktop, I'm going to add in a folder. So I'm going to call this, you can call it any names that you like for today. I'm just going to call it the date and FRA. Yeah. So so this particular folder will contain all my HTML files in it, all my images in it. And to further make it more organized, I'm going to, inside my folder, big folder, I'm going to have another folder, which I'm going to call this images. And I could add all my images in it. So for those who have finished adding their extensions or downloading Visual Studio Code, let's do the folder now and add in about 3 pictures in your image folder. Okay, so once again, one big folder that will put in my HTML and contains the images, and then another subfolder that contains the images. Yeah. So I have chosen 3 photos that I'm going to use for today. For those who need more assistance in finding or even need pictures, there are 3 websites that we identify that will help you to get copyright-free images. Copyright-free images is very important when we do web development, because the least thing we want in our web development is any copyright issues. So these 3 websites are entirely free. You could download it, save it, and then you put it into your images. For my images, the folder where it is going to be seated in will be inside the main folder, which is going to be seated in. I would like to do it on a desktop for a start, so that we know that where you could find your folder easily. You are free to choose your own images that you would like to put in for the web development. Do have at least 3 images. You can get images from your own personal folder or from all these 3 websites. All right, let's take about another 4 to 5 minutes to have our Visual Studio downloaded, extension downloaded, folder created, image folder created with at least 3 images in it. And do also rename your images. So I do have students who download WhatsApp images, and when you download WhatsApp images from the desktop, the default name is always WhatsApp, and then with all the change of numbers, and it can get a bit confusing when we do the coding later. So a sample of how I did it, I just have the images and I just write a name for it. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you are done with it, with the images. Okay, great. If there's a need for questions, do write it in the chat. Yeah. Let's take about another 2 more minutes. So your images does not necessarily have to be in JPEG format. It can be in PNG format. Right, we're still waiting for a few more. All right, let's move on, yeah? So once we have our images, folders created, so we now need to locate the folder on our Visual Studio Code. So on your Visual Studio Code, on the first tab, Explorer, click on it, you will see an open folder. So click on the open folder to locate our folder. So for me, I save it on the desktop. And if you save it on the desktop, click on the folders. So once you click on the folders, it will show you the folder name and the subfolder in it. Okay. So we are going to add in our HTML, our coding inside this main folder, which is the date with FRA for me, but not inside the images. So what I'm going to do is ensure that this image subfolder is not open up. Just have to collapse it. And ensure that when you add in a new file over here, it is not seated like this. Okay. Should you accidentally have this kind of situations, what you can do, just close it, or you could even like I'm gonna do an example .html. If you accidentally did something like this, you can actually drag it out and put it in. Okay. So it will be outside of your images. So to check if you have really do it correctly, you can go back to your file on your desktop, check that the example, the name I give it for my project is called example. The example is outside of the images folder. Yeah. So I will show you how to do it again. So I'm going to delete away this. To add a new project, go to new file, type in the project name. For today, I'm going to write basic.html. The reason why we need a .html is because we are going to do HTML. And Visual Studio Code, as I mentioned earlier on, supports multiple languages. So we need to let them know that, need to let Visual Studio Codes know that we're going to do HTML. So we need to type in .html. And once you type in .html, you will see an icon like this, the red icon. So this red icon will tell you that you have already done it correctly. Okay, at this point of time, does anyone has any issue with adding a file that is not seated inside the image folder, but is inside the main folder? Yeah. Let's take another 2 more minutes to add in the file. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you are okay for me to proceed on. All right, let's wait for a few more minutes. So I'm going to show you again the demonstrations. So when I locate the folder, it will have a main folder and my subfolder. The file that I'm going to create should not be inside the image folder. It should be on the main folder. So add a new file and then type in the name of it. So today I'm going to put in basic and ensure that it's .html and not something else. Yeah, because we are doing HTML today. So and you press enter. So ideally, it should be main folder, basic, which is the one I'm going to do now, and the image. Yeah. Okay. To delete away your file, just press delete on your screen. Just select it and delete it. Just press the delete on your keyboard, and then it will prompt you. Unless you have this, click on. Otherwise, it will prompt you if you want to delete. Yeah. And if it's seated inside, you can actually drag it outside. So I'm going to do, okay. So for example, basic.html is actually seated inside my image file, which I do not want it. I'm going to bring it out. So just drag it and put it out. It will prompt you, do you want to move your basic.html into the main folder name? Yes, move it. And it should be like this. All right, let's move on. So these are the list of my file, my folders. We call this a workspace where we are going to do our typing, our coding in it. So as I mentioned that we need to let the Visual Studio know that we are doing HTML. And inside our workspace, we have to denote there's HTML as well. And when we type in HTML, there are several format of it. HTML5 is the updated format, so we need to let Visual Studio Code know that we're going to do HTML5. So I will show you again. So on the blank piece of workspace, type in HTML and choose HTML5. And once you click on it, automatically Visual Studio Code will generate these codes. So in this code is segmented by a head and a body. Yeah. So whatever that you coded in the head will not be reflected. Let's say if you are going to put a paragraph or a header in the head, it will not be reflected in the web page. Whatever that you coded in the body will be the one that's going to be reflected in the web page. Okay. So I have can we show it again? I'm going to put HTML5. It will automatically generate this code, and I'm going to change the title. I'm going to call it basic. Okay. So when we do any web development, it's important to know what do we want. It's the same example as you want to draw a house and how do you want to draw a house. So the end result of this particular first project will be something like this. It will be a blog post. You can use this as a blog post, which consists of your title, your header, the pictures that I'm going to teach you how to embed the pictures in, and about what is this chicken about, recipe steps, which there's this ordered list, the numbering over here. So we're going to do all this in this project. Yeah. So for those who have a blog and they want to have their own recipe, you could use this. So in my head of the HTML file, I have a title, and it's important that we change the title. By default, it's called documents, but for SEO's processes, we change this so that we could see our web page when someone do a Google search for it. So I'm gonna put, maybe I'll change it to food. You can do any title you want to. It doesn't have to be a food like mine. Yeah. So if you remember, I do have a deep fried chicken header. So let's do the document's title and the header first. Yeah. In HTML, there are 6 headers given by them. When header, H represent header. So when I type in H, you will see that automatically it will generate the relevant codes that we might use it. So H1 is the strongest font. H6 will be the lesser. So in our body, ensure that we are doing in our body, that is the one that is in between, there's an opening and a closing. Do it inside a body. Type in H and select H1 because we want it to be the most biggest among the whole entire document. So when we type in H1, Visual Studio Code or HTML, they will generate a opening tag and a closing tag. So if you look at it, opening tag does not have a slash, closing tag has a slash. So whatever we code, it has to be in between these tags. Then I can type in my header name. I'm going to do a sushi, so I'm going to type in my sushi. So do a Control S, do a save your documents, Control S, and run in default browser. So you should see something like this, food, and then my sushi. So food is the title, my sushi is the header. So change your title so that it will be reflected in your web page. Otherwise, by default, it will be document. And in your body, type in H, and it will generate H1 to H6. So choose the most ideal header that you want. H1 being the biggest font among the 6 of them. So I want my header to be the biggest for now. So I'll choose H1. And in between the opening and the closing tag, I write in my content. Same as opening body and closing body, I write in my content. Okay, the next part would be adding an images in. So we have selected images that is seated in my images folder. So we need to retrieve the images from these subfolders. So type images in short in HTML is called IMG. Sorry, IMG with no spacing. Yeah, take note of the spacing because it's case sensitive. So IMG and you press enter. Yeah. It will generate IMG space with SRC. SRC is the source. So image source and your cursor will be in between this inverted comma. This is where we type in our source, where your folder name in this case. So I name my folder as image. So I'm gonna type in image, type in the image folder. And slash, when I type in slash, you will see all the files, photos that I have actually saved it in. Just choose one of them. So I will do it again. Yeah. Type in IMG to embed photos in our subfolder. So IMG and press enter. SRC represent the source, and we do it inside this, in between these two this inverted comma. And some of you, when you type in your image file, your sub-image file, you may see a pop-up. Yeah. So it means it tells you that you are doing a correct method. For those who are like me, it's not popping up. Just continue to type in your folder name, ensure that they are the same same style. If it's caps, it should be caps. If it's smaller letter, it should be smaller letters. For me, it's the same, and put a slash beside behind the S, the last letter. It should have this. It should have a pop-up. This pop-up will tell you that you are doing correctly. The HTML, the Visual Studio Code, is able to locate your folder. Yeah, this is a very important step, because if we don't save it in the correct folder, or we don't write correctly the folder name, Visual Studio Code will be unable to retrieve the pictures. And it can be in JPEGs or PNG, doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay, let's take about 2 minutes to do the image source. Yeah. For those who are faster, you could type in a alternate text over here. You can call it this is a sushi. So an alternate text will be good for those who are like visually impaired. They couldn't really see the pictures. So when I use a mouse over the pictures, it will appear the text. So let's take 2 minutes here. So if you couldn't locate your file, for today, since we are all beginners, for today I would recommend you to start again, all over again. Do a folder on your desktop, write in a different name than what you have previously, and then redo the images. Yeah. And you should be able to drag and hold and bring it out of it. So if there's a spacing in your sub folder, ensure that there's a spacing in your in your image source. Or if there is a caps in the I, make sure that it's caps in the I, because it's case sensitive. So if halfway through the project or even after the project you realize you want to rename it, do a right click and you can rename it, but ensure that the extension is still .html. Yeah. To check if you have done it correctly, Control S and right click to open in default browser. It should appear like this. Yeah. Okay. You should have a title, header, and pictures. And if you realize that I have several tag and it's kind of messy on your browser, you could actually do a refresh. So it will refresh the whole page again. Yeah. So give me a thumbs up once you are done with the pictures. Yeah. So we are doing the skeleton now. So later on, we will move on to how to beautify your web page. Yeah. If anyone have any questions, do write in the chat. So ensure that we have your documents title changed to the title that you want to, your header, which is H1 header, and a picture. Let's take about another 2 more minutes. So if your pictures is not showing up in your it's not showing up in the default browser, it means that the way you embed it is wrongly. Control S to save your project. Right click, choose Open in Default Browser or Alternate B. So right click it. Your default browser, for me will be Chrome, will be showing. Otherwise, if you do not want like multiple tabs when you do it, you could do a refresh, reload this page or refresh your browser. By pressing this .html, it will already tells the Visual Studio Code that you are doing HTML. Okay, now see. Okay, let's take another 1 more minute and we will move on to adding another header and a paragraph. Okay, all right. So with our first header and images, when I open it in the default browser, it will show me like this, the title, header, excuse me, and the pictures. So now I'm going to add in the about sections. So over here, this about sections, this header, if you look at it, you will realize that they are of the different font width. Okay. So for this, I'm going to choose H2. Yep. So after this images tags, this whole string of images source code, press enter to generate an empty string and type in H and choose H2. And I can type in about and type in the content in between the opening and the closing tag. And we are going to do some write-up about this particular image that you have. For me, it will be sushi. So I'm going to do a write-up about sushis. So to do a write-up about sushis, it will be under paragraph. So P stands for paragraph. So I'm going to put P and I press enter. So in between the opening tag of P and the closing tag of P, I will you can type in your content that you want to say. So again, ensure that your contents are seated in between the opening P and the closing P. The tag, sorry. The opening P tag and the closing P tag. So let me demonstrate again. So we have a title, your first header, and the image that you embedded in. So after that string of image code, press enter, type in H2 or just H and then click on H2 because 2 is a slightly lesser stronger weight than the H1. And in between the, likewise same as the header, H1, can type in the title or the header that you would like to have it. And after which, type in P to write your content in or the paragraph in. You don't have to follow what I'm typing. You can come up with your own write-up. So once we are done with the header 2 and the paragraph, save it, Control S to save it, right click to open in default browser. You should see it over here below the pictures. So in the events that you were coding and it get a bit of messy, we could actually format the documents. So right click again, you will see a format document or Shift Alternate F. Click on format documents, it will Visual Studio Code will align it properly for you, a better visual for you. So again, right click to format document if you need to reorganize it. Because sometimes when we do our write-up, it can extend all the way out of your workspace or the whole entire workspace. So to have it in the organized manner, just right-click to document to format document. Okay, let's take about 5 minutes to do your header 2 and your content, your paragraph. So what we are doing now is the structures of the entire web page. So it's important to have the structures before we can do any coloring or customizing. If anyone have any problems with adding the header 2 and the paragraph, do write in the chat. do give me a thumbs up if you are alright with the header 2 and the paragraph. After which we will move on to adding a list, a ordered list. Okay, great. I see 3 of us has finished. Let's wait for a little bit more. All right, so let's move on. The next particular portions that I'm going to do will be a recipe steps. And if you look at my recipe, that is a 1, 2, 3. There's like a not really a bullet point, like a list, and we classified them as ordered lists because they are in orderly manners. They are lined up in according to 1, 2, 3 the numbers. So we call them an ordered list. So let's add in the recipe steps, the header 2 recipe steps, and an OL, which is ordered list. So after your paragraph, type H, choose your ideal header size, and you can type in recipe. Steps. So after your closing tag for your header, the recipe header, type in OL for ordered list so that it will appear. So whatever content that you write it in, it will appear in the orderly manner. 1, 2, 3. And so on and so forth if you have more than 3 steps. So we type in the ordered list, the OL. Now we have to type in the content in. So to type in the content in, we call this a list, the list item in. So list item, we put it as a LI. It's a list, but I do want to have a bit of spacing. So I'm going in between the opening and closing tag. I have an enter, so I have an empty string for me to do my coding. So in between opening OL and the closing OL, type in LI and enter. You can type in your steps. So LI is inside OL. List items is inside the order list. And should I want to have more than one list item, I do another LI, and this is step 2. save your project and do a quick check by opening default browser. So I have my documents title, header, pictures, the about portions, the paragraph, and the steps. So you need a OL for those ordered lists, for those numbering. So should you decided you don't want a numbering, you want a bullet point, like what Microsoft Word's PowerPoint have a bullet point. To do a bullet point, instead of OL, we use a UL. So it's like unordered kind. So a UL, and same thing, type in the least item and set this and set whatever content you want to set it in. When I do a Control S and I run it in my browser, it will appear like this, a bullet point. And I don't have a header here, so you could add in a header if you like to. So this is the difference between a UL and an OL. OL, ordered list, so it goes in sequence, more of like it has a numbering, like 1 to 3 to onwards, while a UL is just a bullet point. And for every um, for any steps that you want to put in, you have to have an LI, the least item. So let's take about 5 minutes to play around with the UL and the OL. And if there's any questions, write in the chat. Yeah. And do give me a thumbs up if everything is all right. So your content does not have to be the same as what I'm doing now. It's up to you to have your own content. Yeah. So I have the head, the body. Yeah. I have my title, documents title, my first header that will be bigger than the rest, and then I have my image source, and I have another header which is slightly smaller than the first header, and to do descriptions of my picture, and I'm going to and I do have a recipe steps. So it's like a bullet point or those numberings. Yeah. Okay. So let me know if you are okay with this. We will do one more project and we'll go for a short break. So always do remember to save your file before you open in default browser. So Control S. Okay, let's move on to the next project. So we are done with the first project. So good job, guys. We have finished our first project, which is the structures. So now we're going to do a bit more about, going to do a CSS. So I do not need this page anymore. I'm going to have a new file. To create a new file, just press new file and ensure that it's not seated in the image. And this time around, I'm going to do profile.html and press enter. So it's not seated inside the image, but it's outside of the image folder. And I call this profile HTML. So again, when we do our web development, it's good to know what kind of result you want to achieve. So this is what I'm going to achieve. I have Emma Watson's photos. And if you look at the photos, I have two of them, two photos. One is squarish typed. One is a bit of more round and a border on it. And they are not seated side by side, but on top of one another. So let's try this simple project that involve internal CSS. CSS has three types. So we do have an internal, external, and inline styling. External means you do it outside of the HTML. Internal, which we're going to do later on, we're going to do it inside the head. Yeah, and inline, we do it inside the line itself. So for a start, remember to write HTML and choose 5, the updated versions. And same as the structures, we change the title. Call it My Display Pictures. For those who have a web page and you decided to add some colors or borders to your profile pictures, you could use this code. Once we're done with choosing the title, adding the new file and HTML5 and title, we will move on to the content first. Always do your content before you do the CSS styling. CSS styling will be under the head, will be at this portion, but we will leave it for now. We do the content first. We need to retrieve 2 photographs. So img enter, type in your subfolder's name, your images, slash, and if you put a slash, and if you done it correctly, it will show you the photos. So I'm going to choose this photo. And because when my end result shows 2 photos, so I need to do it 2 times. Okay. So let's take another 5 minutes for us to add in 2 photos. Or if you decided to change your photos, you could. Yeah. So new file, type in the title of your project's name and .html. To ensure that you have 2 photos that is done correctly, you could actually do a Control Save, Control S, and run it in your default browser. You should see 2 photos. Yeah, 2 photos of me. Give me a thumbs up if you have finished the 2 source, the 2 image. Okay. Okay, great. So if you look closely at my image, as I mentioned earlier on, same image but different properties. Yeah. Yes, type in HTML and then click on HTML5. It will automatically generate the head. So if you realize that I have same pictures but 2 different kind of properties, one with border, one without the border. So we need to separate them out. When I say separate them out, we use something like an identity. We need to give them identity to differentiate both pictures. Although they are the same pictures, but because we are going to have a different properties, so we need to give one of them an identity. So in between your image and your source, identity, we call it ID. So after your G, press space and type in ID and enter. So my second picture is the one that is going to be rounded. So I'm going to give it an identity. I'm going to give it a name so that it's same pictures but different kind of properties. And I'm going to call this those. So I'll show you again how to do the identity. So after you can do it before the S or after the G is fine as long as there's a spacing. Press space key, type in ID and enter. You will see the inverted colons again, and you will type in your name for your second pictures, the identity. For me, I'm going to do photos. And take note if there is an S or a dash. When we do ACSS styling, it should be the same. So once we've given them an identity, we are ready to code the CSS. So as I mentioned earlier on, inside whatever that is quoted in the head, it will not be shown, the words will not be shown in the web page. Whatever you put it over here, the other content, it will be shown. So the CSS properties will be linked to the content. So I have a identity ID. For ID, we use a hashtag to call out the identity. So we use a hashtag and type in photos. So we are doing the properties for the second photos now, which is hashtag photos and curly bracket, press enter to have more space to do the properties. And in my photos, I do want to give it a width of maybe a 100 pixel. So type in WI and then press enter. It will generate the full thing, WIDTH. Yeah. If it doesn't work, try it again. Okay, sorry, my bad. Sorry. We need to do a styling for it. Yeah. If you realize that just now I make an error, if we didn't do it properly, it will show something like this. So this is an error mistake from my part. So type in a style first. You need to have a style to let Visual Studio Code know that you are doing a CSS now. So inside a style, then we do the hashtag. And if you realize when I do the hashtag, it will kind of highlight it. And type in photos with a curly bracket. So remember, it's a style inside the head. And yes, and this is why we prefer Visual Studio Code. So if there's any mistake that we are doing halfway, you will immediately highlight it to us. And in my photos, I'm going to give it a width. A width of maybe 100 pixels. So this will change the width size. 100 pixels. I'm going to give it a height of 100 pixels as well. So it's kind of look like a square now. And I'm going to give it a border radius of 50%. Okay, why we need a width and a height of 100 pixels? Because when I do my second picture, look at my second picture, it's kind of like a circle because I did a square. And when I add in a border radius, it's kind of making it round. So from a square, it becomes a round shape. So I have a border radius of 50. You can play around with the border radius. It can be 4 pixels, then it will be a bit of a curve. Okay. And let's continue on the border first. So border radius of 50, and we need to give a property for my border. So there are 3 types of properties in for border. We have the size of it, the weight of it. So border, I'm going to give it a 4 pixels. I'm going to call it a solid fill, solid, the type, and I'm going to give it a color black. So in order for the border radius or even border to work, you have to ensure that there's 3 properties: the font weight, the weight of it, the type of it, and the color of it. And Control S, do a quick run, do a quick check on your browser, you will see this. Yeah. Now you can play around with the border radius. You can do a 10% or 4%. And remember, whenever you change, you have to Control S to save it and run in the default browser. See, I have a 10 pixel, so it's kind of look like a bit tiny, not really a circle, but more of a square with a curved side. Yeah. So width and height 100 pixels, so it's from a square and slowly it becomes a circle using a border radius. So my end result involve the 2 photos to be on top of one another. But when I do this code, I realize it's side by side. If I want to have it on top of one another, I can add in this called a display block. And I save it and I run it again. It will be one after another, not side by side. So okay, play around with the border properties, the weight of it, the colors of it. Yeah. At this point of time, if any questions, you may raise it up in the chat. And once we are done with this project, let's take a short break. Okay, give me a thumbs up or just write done once you are all right with this project. Okay, great. All right, please go for a break. We will come back at 10:45, yeah, to continue on the next project. During this time, if anyone has any questions during the break, you can raise it up as well. Otherwise, we will start the next sections at 10:45. Yeah. Okay. We will start the next sessions at 10:45. Yeah, I'll be right back. Okay, all right. It's 10:45. I believe everyone had a good short break. So for our second part of our online classes, we're going to recap on what we have taught earlier on, and we're going to do another project. Yep. So as mentioned before, that on our desktop, or even on my desktop, seated a folder. And file management is important in HTML or even in programming, because you need to locate your file. So I prefer to do it on a desktop, so that I remember. It's a habit for me. So I do it on a desktop. I name it a big folder. So the big folder, the first folder, the big folder, I'm going to name it as a date and the title. And when I enter it in, I have another folder, subfolder is called images. Instead of putting my images out of a folders, I want to make it more organized. I put it inside an image folder. So I know that whenever I need photos for my webpage, I will go to the image folder to retrieve it and not anywhere else. And why we have a folder specialized for images is because we may have more than 5 or 10 projects that we're going to do, and it can get very messy to find your image. So in my big folder, I have a subfolder that says image, and I save my images inside it. Now back to our Visual Studio. Okay, I'm going to close this. I will show you again how I do it. So on start of a Visual Studio, we need to locate the folder that we want to work on it. So you can go to File, open a folder, or just simply press the Explorer, which is the first tab on the left, and open folder. So open folder, press on the main big folder, not the image, but the big folder. So once I press it, it will list out the items, list out the projects or the contents inside the folders, which has the image and the 2 projects that we did earlier on. And should we accidentally do our project inside the image folder, like this, for example, like this, and we want to take it out, or you can either redo it by pressing delete, so it will prompt you, do you want to delete? Or you could I would prefer just hold it, left click, hold it, drag it out. Drag it out, and it will prompt you, are you sure you want to move the example HTML into the big folder? So yes, move. So you will see it outside the image. So in the events that I forgot to put .html, I put something else, or I didn't put .html, and I want to do .html. Right click to rename the file, and you can rename it .html. So if I do not rename it, okay, I do not do .html, the computer will not know what is this about. It will just do a text. So you can't do any programming coding in it because it's just a text. So we need to let the Visual Studio Codes know that this is a HTML. So we .html. Yeah. And for what we do earlier on the basic project, whatever we do over here for the basic project is the skeleton. Okay. the skeleton of the web page. So we have to do a skeleton first before we can even do the customization. So when we start on a web development, you have to understand what is our end product. In this case, I have a blog page that talks about a recipe, which contains the header, the pictures, the about portions, the recipe steps with the ordered list and unordered list. So whenever we start on HTML, we have to click on HTML5, which is the updated versions, change the title, and do it in the body sections. H refers to header, one being the strongest, more of like a bigger font weight. H6 will be the lightest. Image, to add in an image, you have to locate the image of where you need to locate the photos of where you save it in. So IMG stand in short is called image. So image source, type in the file name image. If it does not appear pop-up, do a slash, it will show you whatever content that is inside the image. So case sensitive as well. If it's a big letter, it has to be big letter. It has to be same as the subfolder. Alternate tag, so that when I mouse over it, I could see a text appearing. And this is quite good for the visually impaired. When they cannot really see the pictures, but when they mouse over it, they could see it. They could understand it. Then after which I have H2, another smaller header. P denotes any sentences, any paragraph that you want to put it in. I need a big, and I need a P, a opening P, a opening P text, and a closing P text. Slash represent closing tag. Yeah? And another H2, which is the header. Okay? Now there are two parts of the when you do the bullet point or the numbering. So OL represent the numbering, the step, the 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. UL represent the bullet point, which is the dot. Yeah. And in all of the OL ordered list or UL the unordered list, you need a list item. You need an LI, and you do it inside the LI. Yep. So in the events that you were coding and then it get messy, do a right click to format document. So again, right click, format document. Else, save your project and open in default browser. You will see your header, your pictures, and the content that you wrote in. So recap on profile, where we work on the image properties, where I have two images. So to do a new file, just click on the new file and then type in profile.html. So whenever we start HTML5, which is the updated version, change the title because this is about my display pictures. I'm going to add properties to my display pictures. So I change it to my display pictures. Leave the styling aside first. Always do the content. Okay? So we do the content in the body. We retrieve two images from my images subfolder. It can be in any kind of JPEGs or PNG is fine. They are the same pictures, but they have different properties. So which is why I need to give it an identity. We need to separate them out, although they are for same pictures. So ID, identity, photos, that is behind, that is in between the IMG and the source. So give it a name. And when we do ID, the CSS would be a hashtag. ID, hashtag. They go in line. And you have to do it inside a styling. And the events that we forgot about it, Visual Studio Code actually prompt us, so not to worry. So hashtag, and I type in the name, the ID name, which is photos, a curly bracket. This is the properties. width of 100 and 100, so it looks like a square first, and then with a border radius that will round it. Yeah. And when we do borders, it's important to note there is 3 properties in it. You need to have a size, you need to know what type it is, and the color. To how to get the color, you don't have to bother about that little square black icon. Just have to type in the colors. It will automatically generate the colors for you. Okay. So I'm going to do black. Yeah. Okay. And to have them on top of one another, we use a display block. So once again, save it and open a default browser. You have it. So at this point of time, is everyone all right with the file management and the 2 projects that we did earlier on? Give me a thumbs up. Yep. Thank you. So the next project we're going to do will involve more HTML content and the CSS. And it involves the identity, the ID, and another type, we call it a class, which I will show you shortly. Yeah. So new file, click on new file, ensure that it's not seated inside the image. Okay. You can name it as gallery. For this project, I would like to take it slowly because it's quite a big project that we could work on. Okay. As usual, we need to know what we want to do. We need to form up the ideas, the image that we want to have in our website. So for this particular project, there's 3 photos. You could use this if you have a shop, a bakery, and you want to showcase your cakes, different type of cakes. You can use these codes, these customizations to showcase your product. I have 3 photos, and they kind of look like a Polaroid films. Yeah. And if you look closely, I actually have a boxes that actually contain the photos. So these particular projects involve a big box, we call it a container, a big box that stores everything inside. And I have another box that groups the photos inside it. Yeah? And I have individual box to put the photos in. Yeah. So again, I have a big box. I need a box to contain the whole entire web page. And because my pictures, the colors are the same, I need to have another box that will group the colors together. And the individual box that put the photos in. So I'm not going to, it may sound a bit confusing at this moment because when I show you the code, you will be able to understand better. Because just know that box, we have a box which in programming, which in HTML we call it a div, to contain the photo in. So on my workspace, I'm going to type in HTML5. Okay. I will change the title. I'm going to call it a gallery. Then I'm going to move on to the content. I'm going to leave the head aside. I'm going to move on to the content, which is in the body. So in my body portions, my content, I need to have a big box which we call it a div, D-I-V. So type in a div, a div, to contain the whole entire items that we have on a web page. Because when we do our arrangements later on, you understand why I need a big div to do it. So again, type in div, press enter. I have the div. And I'm going and inside the opening div, I'm going to give it an ID because do you remember when I told you just now about the box and the box and the box, we get a bit confused. Yeah, it's because we didn't give the box a name. So you're going to give a box a name, an ID. So inside, in between V and the close bracket, put a space, type in ID, enter, call it a container. So for a start, the ID, let's have the same ID. Okay? Then in between the opening text and the closing text, put a space. So we are doing the outer layer first, the big layer, and slowly we'll move on to a slightly smaller box and a smallest block to contain our information in. If we are good with the container div, we need another box to hold on all our individual photos. So I'm going to do another div, another small box, div, enter. Go to the V, put a space, type in ID. The name, you can call it a gallery. Okay. So I will show you again. Okay. So in our body, the first box that we're going to do is the outer layer, the big box, the whole entire content. So type in div, enter. Go to the in between the V and the closing bracket. Type in ID to give it an identity. So when we do our CSS styling, we will be able to do it. We will be able to customize the containers. So ID name containers. So this is for our CSS styling. Yeah. And in between the container opening tag and the closing tag, we press enter. Do another small div that calls a gallery. So we are grouping the photos together. Okay. So if you look at my line, the container opening tag, there's actually a line. It represents that this closing div belongs to identity container div. Okay. So the next portions, the next box that we're going to do, we're going to add in our own photos in. Yeah. But if you realize earlier on, my photos have the same colors. Yeah. So I'm going to, in between the opening tag of gallery and the closing tag, press enter. So they have an empty string to work on. And we're going to have a box, another box to put in individual photos in the box. Yeah. And I have to give it a name. So instead of ID, there's another way of classifications. We call it a class. And we call it a photo. So there are two ways of grouping the CSS is, or even classifying our div, is the ID and the class. So at this point of time, is everyone all right with the div? Yeah. Thank you. So inside the div class photo, the box for the photos, press enter, and we can link the photos from our image folder. Yeah. So again, I will show you. So what we have earlier on is div container, ID, and then another gallery, another div called gallery, and a smaller div, a smaller box. We call it a photos, class photos. And in between the opening text for class photos, the box, I press an enter, and this is where I bring in my photos. I embedded my photos in it. So IMG, and then the source. So in this case, I type in the subfolder name, image, slash, choose any photos. Yeah. So let's add in 2 photos first, and a third photo, I'm going to show you how you can get it from a URL. So in the process, you were lost with so many div in the div, so many box in the box, and it's very complicated on your workspace. Do a right click and format documents. And you can take a look at the line that is on the left. So this line will actually helps you to find where is the opening div and the closing div. So this div class photo opening tag that is here, the closing tag is here. And I'm going to put a spacing and a space in between over here to do my next photos. For every photos that we do, because they are individual boxes containing individual photos, you have to give it a div. So it's the same thing, div, spacing, I call it class, photos, because they have the same red color. And the same thing as what we did in the first box, we're going to have an image, going to embed an image in. So the image source, the subfolder image, and an image. So give me a thumbs up once you have what I have on the screen. So one container, one gallery, a D for photos, another D for another photos. Right. Do give me a thumbs up if everything is all right. Or if any questions needed to be answered, please write in the chat. Thank you. Let's give the rest another 5 minutes to embed the 2 photos in. If you need another demonstration of the div, do let me know. I'm more than happy to do a demonstration. Okay, Ken, no problem. I can show you how I get the class again. So I'm going to remove away this. So ID is container, gallery, and to do the class, I type in a div, enter, and same thing as how I did the ID, I go in between the V and the bracket in the opening tag, press enter, sorry, press space, and type in the class. And I give it a class called photos. So it's similar to how we do an ID, but this time around, instead of ID, I want to give it a class. So picture them like a box, a big box, and then we have another box that contains every of our photos, like something like an album, a photo album. And inside that, we have 3 different box that contains the pictures. So add in 2 images, 2 div, 2 boxes as class as photos and the images. So if we are lost with the div and the div is too messy on your workspace, you can always do a right click, format documents. And Visual Studio Code will help you align it. So you know where's the opening div and the closing div. Is everyone all right with the photos? So in HTML, there are 2 ways of adding photos into your web page. One is what we are doing earlier on, is embedded from the folder itself. Another way you could do is from a website. Now for this project, I'm going to go into Pixels Bay website, and I am going to select maybe a photo of a chicken, and I'm going to choose this. And to select to copy the URL of the particular photos, we do not use this over here. This is for the whole entire website. We click on the pictures, right click it. There's this copy image address. Yeah. Okay, I'll show you again. To embed it using URL, do not use this because this is a URL for the whole entire website. Click on the pictures instead. Right click. It should have copy image address. Not copy image, but copy image address. Yeah. Okay. Copy the image address and go back to your Visual Studio Code. We're going to create a third box that's going to put in the photos. Same thing, a div, and in between the V and the closing bracket, I have a class by pressing a space bar, class, and photos. The class name is called photos. Yeah. And I put a space, I put a enter, empty string in between the opening and the closing tag. And I'm going to put the image source. So type in image source. And instead of finding the subfolder, the image folder, I am just going to use Control V to paste the URL. Okay. Okay, try having 3 photos, and then give me a thumbs up in the chat if you are all right. Yeah. If you have any questions, do raise it up as well. Yeah. Now to check if we have done it correctly, Control S and run it in the default browser. You should see 3 photos. These 2 are from my folders, and these chickens is from Pixels Bay. If anyone need me to redemonstrate, I'm more than happy to do so as well. So just let me know, yeah? Okay, give me a thumbs up if everyone is all right, and I'll move on. Otherwise, let's take 5 minutes, yeah, to finish our photos, yeah, and the div. Yeah. Because the div is pretty important. If we are confused with the div, the rest of the project will be a bit difficult to understand. Yeah. Try embed the photos using this URL. Yeah. Okay, how about the rest? Are you all right with the photos? Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on. Once we have 3 photos, we are going to do our styling now. So start at the head of your document. After the title, type in style to denote a CSS. And in between the opening tag and the closing tag, have some spacing in between. Yeah. So the first ID or the first div that I have is container. So ID, you will have to use a hashtag. So hashtag container. And I press enter. In my container, on my web browser, I want to denote the space I want for my container. I'm going to give it a width of 1,100 pixels. I'll explain to you why I choose 1,100 pixels later on, but let's just put a width 100 and 1,100 pixels first. Yeah. That is for the whole entire box. Okay. After which we move on to the gallery. So ID again, so in ID, it will be a hashtag gallery. Okay. And a curly bracket, a space. So for my gallery, I'm going to do a float left. So float left refers to any content in it, it will float to the left. So when we read English text, we read from the left to the right. So that is the same thing. So float left. Yeah. Then I do have a margin bottom, which I will explain to you later on why we need a margin bottom of a 50 pixels. Yeah. So after the gallery, okay, all right, let's move on to the photo now. So for ID, it's hashtag. For class, we do not use a hashtag. We use a full stop. A full stop class. Class and, sorry, a full stop for full stop and a photo, because class is for photos. Yeah. So it appears an error earlier on, that's which is why I prefer Visual Studio. If I make any mistake, I could see it immediately. Okay. So dot full stop and a curly bracket. So in my photos, if you realize that I do have like a red kind of things, a border, I call it a border. So I'm going to do a border. And in borders, there is 3 properties. So I'm going to give it 8 pixels first. Yeah. Solid, which is solid field, and then the red color. Yeah. And in each individual class, I'm going to give them a size. I'm going to give it a size, a width of 326 pixels. So how I denote this figure, or how I even denote this figure is a simple calculation. So if I have 3 photos, so 326 times 3 should not somehow exceed this part. So you can play around with the numbers. You can even make it smaller, yeah, or even make the container bigger. At my end product as well, sorry, I do have this little, okay, I wouldn't say little, but this little, this thing over here, there's kind of make it an effect of like a Polaroid. So we call this a border bottom width. So type in border and find bottom width. And I'm going to give it a 120 pixels. Yeah. So border bottom width will target the bottom border only. It will not target the top, the left, or the right, because the top, left, and the right will have 8 pixels. But border bottom width will target the one that is specifically below. And if you look at my end result again closely, if you realize there is like a tiny little curve on each of my small boxes. Yeah, so I use a border radius. I'm not gonna give it too big because I don't want it to be too big for me. You're free to explore the border radius. So 4 pixels should be fine. You can use 4 pixels or 4%. Both are fine. Then again, I want my content inside the box for photos to float to the left because we read from the left to the right. So float. So I'm going to use a float left. And I do want a bit of spacing in between individual boxes. In between all these individual boxes, I don't want it to collapse together. It looks very messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a margin right. Margin right of about 20 pixels. Yeah. So it will appear, it will have a bit of spacing in between here. Okay, I'll show you the codes now. Yeah. So border, 3 properties. The width, play around with the numbers. Border, border bottom width that targets the bottom layer of, the bottom border only. You can have a top or a side is fine. Yeah. And then we have a border radius of 4 pixels, can be percentage, is all right as well. And float left. And a margin right, so they have a space in between each individual class div. Okay. To further give it an effect, we're going to add some shadows in it. So in my end product, I do not have a shadow, but I'm going to show you how a shadow works. So type in a box, because div is similar to a box. So box shadow, and I'm going to do a 4 pixels, and a 10 pixel. I'll explain to that. I'll explain what is 4, 4, and 10 later on. And the 3 properties and the RGB of 176, 178, and 180. So 4 pixels, and 10 refers to the box. The X, the Y, and the 10 refers to the blurriness, how blur you want your box to be. Okay. And RGB is color, red, green, blue. So how do I get this color? You can either find it on Google, type in RGB colors, find in the three numbers and add it in, or you can do a random random numbers and play around on Visual Studios. Yeah. So I would prefer to use a do a Google SEO search for RGB colors, and I find the best colors. Shadow is kind of like a grayish color. So I have this 176, 178, 180. This is for my box shadow. Okay. So the next styling I'm going to do is I want to go into deeper of my box, my class box photo. I want to do the image. I want to give a width, a size for my image. So I want to go in deeper in it. So after this dot photos at closing bracket, dot photos img, which is image in short. Then open bracket, press enter, and type in a width of 326 pixels. You can play around with this. It's all right. So, 6 pixels. And if you realize that my dot, the indentation is not aligned, not standardized, just right click, format documents. It will standardize for you. It'll make it neater for you. I'm going to test it out so that I can show you how the shadow works here. So Control S to save and open in the default browser. Yeah. So if you realize that my width is somehow the same, but my height, they are not in line, so I need to change the height in my code as well. Yeah. So look at the shadow. This is how the shadow look like. The X and the Y and the blurriness radius. Yeah. So at this point of time, does anyone has any question? Please raise it up. You are free to explore the width of your pictures. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I see a question. So how do we get rid of the white space between the image and the red spot? Were you referring to this particular? Yeah, I'm referring to this particular thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So yeah, we can do something about it. So to close the bottom gap of the image, because each pictures are different from one another, we use this margin bottom because we are targeting the bottom part of -5 pixels. Okay, then save it and run it. It should work. Negative. Yep, there you have it. And I had actually add in a height, so this kind of standardize the photos. So a negative 5 pixels. Okay, anyone has any more questions or any difficulty? Yeah, please raise it up. All right, good question asked. So if I want to add in a note in my workspace but I do not want my comment to be reflected inside the workspace or any of the code. So let's, for example, I am going to do a comment after the margin bottom to explain what is margin bottom about. On your keypad, do control and a slash. Or even if you want to do a comment for body, control and a slash. So if you take note, these two are different because this is a CSS, this is a HTML. So the way they do comment is different. Yeah. So I can type in this is a comment, or more like a note. Yeah. So press Control plus the slash. Maybe Control slash might help. Yeah. If I put a plus, it might be confusing. Yeah? So green will denote that as the comment. Yeah. So different programming language has different way of adding a comment. But usually we will recommend just press Control and a slash. You can type in your comment here. And it will not be reflected inside the workspace. Yeah. All right, if we are done with this, now we are going to move on to the body background. GB in row 25. Okay, this is, you don't have to worry about the box over here, because once you key in the colors, it will automatically generate the icon. This is a color icon. So same thing, if I write in red, it will automatically generate a red icon because it's red. RGB is just a property of the particular colors. Okay. So let's move on to do a body. So I'm going to go back to my default browser. And if you kind of look at my end product, okay, it takes me quite a while to realize that actually the background colors that I have over here is not white. I had the same reaction. It's like, it's not white at all. It is a bit of smoky white. It's not entirely white. Yeah. So if I want to change my background colors, I do a body. Sorry, type in a body under CSS portions. But this time round, I do not need to do a hashtag or a class because body is just body alone. But what you need is body and a opening bracket, enter background color. You can choose any background color you like. For this project, I'm going to use white smoke. So it's a bit of white and a bit of smoky white. Yeah. So format documents, if it gets messy, it's kind of, you align your comment as well. Yeah. So anyone has any questions so far? If you are good, give me a thumbs up. All right. Okay, for those who have finished it, test it out. If it works, I would like you to try adding another gallery, which means I would like you to try to add in additional photos underneath these 3 photos over here. So I have one gallery, try to add in another gallery of photos on your own first. Yeah. If you need help with finding photos, you can use Pixelspace. Yeah. Let's take about 15 minutes to try adding another gallery by ourselves. If anyone has any questions, do raise it up as well. Yeah. Yes, that's right. This is a comment sessions for HTML. So I'm putting it here to show you the difference between the comment in CSS and HTML. So now try adding a gallery, another row by yourself. So, okay, if you want to reduce the space in between individual boxes, you have to make use of the margin right. But it will affect your first three photos. So you could give another class name called photo row or any other class name that's different from row, and do the same thing but change the bottom right. If you are referring to the spacing in between the two different div, not the row yet. And if you want to reduce the space in between different rows, play around with this margin bottom because it reflects on the bottom part. So does that answer your question, say? Okay, great. Yeah. All right, let's take another 5 more minutes. So in order for your CSS to work, you have to ensure that the name that you give it in your div class, is there any spacing or is there any capital letters or small letters? It have to be the same. Yeah. Class is a dot. ID is a hashtag. And right click to format documents if you realize that your div are all over the place. You couldn't get your div right. You couldn't find where's the opening and the closing div. So when I right click to format documents, I do see a line here. So it will tell me that I have a big container, a big thing, and inside this big container, I have another gallery, that the row of 3 pictures over here. And I give it I give a box for each picture so that I have the red color border. For those who have not figured out how to add another gallery, we will add a gallery inside a container. Not inside the gallery, but inside the container over here. So the same thing will be div ID gallery. Unless you want your second gallery to have different kind of colors or styling, instead of calling gallery, you can call something else. And then when you do your CSS, the ID would be something else, the name that you gave. So that the name that you put on your ID or your class is important. Yeah. If there is a spacing or a mistake in naming it, then it's kind of hard to find it. So div gallery and then another box, 3 small box that calls class, photos, and inside these 3 small box, I'm going to have images, another 3 images. Okay. And this time around, I'm going to copy image address. I'm going to have a URL. So I'm still coding inside the div ID gallery. So it's div. Okay. And it's kind of indent to the left. I'm going to format code so that it's aligned. Div and spacing class photo, because they have the same properties. So image source for my fifth photo, I'm got it from Pixelbay as well. And I'm going to do the second photos. Sorry, the last photos. So inside the div gallery, another box, div class photo. And the same thing, image source, the particular photos. Yeah. So right click to format document. So anyone has any problem in adding another gallery? And should I decided I do not want the same type of format for my gallery from this first row, you just have to change this. And if I decided I do not want red color for my second row, I can call this, maybe I'll call this second. Yeah. So all my second row pictures, the colors will change. So the class name is second. So when I go up here, maybe right after photo image, before the body, I put a dot second. So the dot second refers to the photos inside the second gallery. Yeah. So dot second, and I still want my things to be the same. It's just that I do not want the color to be the same. So I can do a copy, paste it in, and just change the color. I'm going to change it to blue. Okay. And right click to format cell. So border 3 types, the size, solid, and the colors, the width, and I want it to look, look like a the effect of, so I target the bottom width with 120 pixels, so it's kind of expand it up, but the rest will be still 8 pixels. A bit of radius, so it's not really a square, and float left, margin right to find the spacing between each individual div, yeah, and a box shadow. And I do need this photo image, a second image, the dot second image, because we need to work on the image inside the particular div. So I want it to be standardized, so I'm going to do the same thing with it. Yeah. So right click to format document. So second image refers to the images inside the second class. If I don't put this in, the pictures for my second row will not be the same as the first row. Okay. To do so for the third and the fourth is the same process. Okay. But for today, we will do up to second gallery. So I'm going to test it out. I'm going to save. I'm going to run in my open default browser. This is what I have. Yeah, 2 rows. So now that we have our photos ready, our gallery ready, I want to centralize it. I want to make it in the middle to make it nicer. So what I do is I add in under container, because it involves the whole entire web page. So under container, I'm going to write in margin auto. Margin and auto. Okay. Save it, and I'm going to test it out. Okay. So under container, add in a margin auto. You have something like this that is centralized. Because it involves the whole entire web page, which is why I do in container. Margin auto. Anyone has any questions, please raise it up. If you are done with this project and you kind of like it, give me a thumbs up. Yeah. How do we add space between the first and the second gallery? Okay, under gallery, have a margin bottom, 50 pixels. Yeah. Otherwise, on the dot second, you can have a, okay, no, I shouldn't teach you that. Margin bottom 50 pixels. Try play around with this. Otherwise, you have to change the gallery to another name and put margin top. But margin bottom should be all right for it. Yeah. Okay, all right, give me a thumbs up. Yeah, if you're all right. Okay, great. We have one that's finished. How about the rest? Okay, let's take another 5 more minutes here. Okay, good. I see some responses. Okay, great. So with this, we come to the end of our projects to practice. Yeah. I do have a online resources that I wish to share with everyone. That in the events you are doing web development and you require some committee help, these are the 3 online helps that you could get it from the website. Yeah. And other than that particular 3 website, we do have a future ASEAN, already ASEAN's web page where you could use it. I'll show it to you where to find it. So in the ASEAN Foundation web page, under this Start Learning tab, there are courses that you could potentially explore it. So digital citizens is more for like what we are doing today, the front end development. There is this dream team player that focuses on for Microsoft products, the data wizard, anything got to do with data analysis, with Python, it's under data wizard. Social innovator, we do app creations with C sharps. And for those who are completely new to computer, please sign up under new to digital literacy. Yeah. So for future ready ASEAN, start learning, you can find all these courses that you could explore with. With this, we would like to take in questions from the floor. So I'll hand over the sessions to Jasmine. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our training today. It's been great to have everyone, and I hope it's been useful. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate all of you who have gone through this training today. It's a big leap always to go through something new, especially in computer science, which you have not done before. So please give yourself a pat on the back. Well done. Now, to add, I will be taking questions in terms of anything to do that is non-technical on how you might be able to continue your journey as well. Now, before I do that too, I'd like to just very quickly share with you the Future Ready ASEAN platform. Right, see, can everybody see my screen? If you can't, please put it on the chat room that you can't. That'd be great, then I'll know. Now, the Future Ready ASEAN platform is a platform that was built in partnership with the ASEAN Foundation and Microsoft, as mentioned by Nuzul earlier. Now, the beauty of it is that it's free and it provides you with free training. And what Amber has done for you today is given you a kickstart into how to use Visual Studio Code and to get you started on your learning journey. Now, if you go to Start Learning, you'll notice that there are 4 tracks. What we have covered today is part of the Digital Citizen track, which is where HTML5 and CSS sits. If you would like to do a little bit more on Office 365, that would be Dream Team Player. If you wanted to get a little bit more understanding AI and learning a little bit of Python, that would be Data Wizard. And finally, if you want to do a little bit more in terms of apps, Social Innovator would be the next step. Now, the beauty of this platform is that when you go in, you also see a lot in terms of your learning progress, and you'll be able to collect badges. Now, the last thing to add, I'd just like to add very quickly as well, is if you are a Singapore citizen, in Singapore, Empire Code does have government funding, so you don't pay a single cent for HTML5 and Python courses. That is going to be covered by Skills Future, and if you're NTUC income UTAP member, you can also get funding through there. Now, I will take questions from the floor. If anybody has any questions for me as well, I'll just wait a little while. Oh, thank you, Maria. Did you mean the class sizes for Skills Future and UTAP? Now, those class sizes really vary. They can be as little as 2, but they can also be as big as 20. So it really depends on scheduling. We do try to run a flexi-hour program to try and gather as many students together, because when there is a gathering of students, what does happen is that you tend to learn from each other as well, and you build a little community to help each other too. Now, in the world of computer science, getting help from everybody is key. That's one of the things. And one of the things with that too is that we'll also be able to, you can help each other debug, basically. That's one of the main things too. So that's something to always remember when doing anything to do with computer science. Also online help. We'll be sharing the slides with you, but Amber had shown 3 links to online help too. And please do always use the online help that is available as well. There is also on LinkedIn a Future Ready ASEAN group. Please do join that too. We can get that sent out to you via email when the link shares for the video replay and for the PowerPoint slides are ready. Now, it's a closed group, so only people that have attended such trainings are allowed to join in that closed group, but you may post any questions you have on that group as well. You're welcome, Sok King. Thanks for joining. Now, the objective of the ASEAN coding classes was to provide free learning across the ASEAN region. Now, if you do realize in ASEAN, we do not have computer science as part of compulsory school curriculum yet. Compulsory school curriculum for computer science is already in a lot of states in the United States. It is also in the UK, for example. Australia has also started rolling it out, and Israel was one of the few countries that did roll it out about 14 years ago. Now, to encourage free learning, especially if you are already an adult or you're in your late teens and you haven't learned it, the Future Ready ASEAN platform was built just to provide that. Now, Microsoft also has a lot of free resources that were not tapped on because their resources were put on many different platforms. So what the Future Ready ASEAN platform did was to put together all the resources from the different platforms that Microsoft had into somewhere that you can easily access at one go. The other important thing is we made sure that the languages taught were current industry standard languages that could be helpful to you, whether you're running a little business or you want to start a business or you want to upskill yourselves for your job, for example. So it is all part of employability. And now to do these online classes is the best time because most of us are stuck at home or we would rather be at home. So that's the main objective. And thank you for asking, Idris. I think it's a great question. Thank you. Hi, Hamiza. Thanks for your question. Your question is the website that I just built on VS Code live and functional now? Now, unfortunately, it is not live and functional yet. To move things live and functional, you do need what you call a hosting service where you can load up your website. However, because you've learned a bit of HTML now, say you want to build a website and you decide to do it on WordPress and you wanted to customize it better to your needs, be it colors that you like or a different CSS, you understand it a lot better now as well. So that journey will definitely help you. As part of our Skills Future courses, we like I said, we do have HTML. So if you do want to potentially get something live, that can be supported as our student too. So do look into that. Alternatively, there are many teaching platforms as well on how you can get a website that you're building live and functional. So please feel free to use YouTube to get some of the information too. Great, I'll leave 2 more minutes in case anybody wants to put in any questions. There is also a post-training survey to do as well. Amber, sorry, can I trouble you to drop it on the group chat? Great, this is even better. Or you can have the link on the group chat too if it's easier. Now, because you're already an attendee, Hamiza, in terms of future classes, we do have your email address. So if there is anything, I'm very sure ASEAN Foundation will reach out. If not, please do follow the social media pages of ASEAN Foundation and Empire Code. And if there's anything up, we will definitely inform you. I will drop very quickly as well. The Empire Code Facebook ID is Empire Code SG. It's the same for our Facebook and Instagram. We are also on LinkedIn, easily searchable. Nuzul, if you can just drop, I believe the ASEAN Foundation or the ASEAN Foundation ID is just ASEAN Foundation on Facebook and Instagram as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Type it there, but it's also easily searchable. ASEAN Foundation is very big. They're in support of pulling ASEAN together for many reasons. Great, thank you, Nuzul, and thank you, Hamiza, for your questions as well. Okay, we're 12:20 right now. You may start. Please do finish the form. The form. You can feel free to start leaving the group as long as you have a link to the post-training survey. We would really appreciate that. You know, we would love to see how many other ways we can improve and help people like yourselves continue your journey and what you like to achieve as well. So these post-training surveys are very important to us. Again, on behalf of the ASEAN Foundation, Empire Code, and Microsoft, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to potentially hearing from you in the future. Okay, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.